Darren Wisely here. I'm the pro-life, pro-gun, pro-liberty candidate dedicated to defend the Constitution. Hope everyone's being safe out there and social distancing as much as possible amid the coronavirus pandemic. Being especially cognizant of the elderly and those with medical conditions that may be especially vulnerable at this time. If you or someone you love has gotten the coronavirus, then my heart goes out to you. And we will be praying for those infected with the virus for a speedy and safe recovery. Now, social distancing isn't fun for anyone, but trying to come up with a positive takeaway, it's a great time to do something you've always wanted to do, but just haven't had the opportunity to do due to time constraints. So that could be something like learning a new skill, where there's websites like Skillshare for, or reading a book that you've always wanted to read. And because of that, I put together a list of 10 books to read during the COVID-19 shutdown. These are books that will increase your knowledge of freedom. These are topics that really interest me, political science / political philosophy, economics, and U.S. history. So without further ado, we'll get into that list. So first off, these books are not in any particular order, like of importance. I tried to kind of group them together, but overall they're just going to give you some of the principles of freedom to take away, and I tried to make it a little diverse so that they'd fit different interests that different viewers might have. So first on the list, Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. This is a great primer. Anyone wanting to learn the foundations of economics, I highly recommend this book. It talks a lot about the seen versus the unseen in terms of policy. The problem with a lot of politicians is they have a policy in mind. It sounds like a good idea, but they don't realize all of the unintended consequences, the ripple effects of the policies, what could happen down the road, and that's kind of one appeal to me, is that I have this worldview where I do look at all the unintended consequences of a policy rather than just, oh, this is a good idea, let's do it, but actually thinking through the different scenarios. So this is really important, and once you read this book, you'll be really frustrated by a lot of the common fallacies politicians or maybe just your friends on Facebook make. A lot of these ideas are based on Frederic Bastiat, which I'll talk about later. So that's a really good one. Number 2, Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell. This is another intro to econ, another great one. I almost just picked one, but I'm a huge fan of Thomas Sowell. There's no charts, no graphs, nothing like that, none of the boring stuff that you probably have in mind when you think about economics. It's called The Citizen's Guide to Economics for a reason. It's a great way to get educated real fast. And Thomas Sowell is someone I'm just such a huge fan of. He's worked in countless areas, like race, culture. He wrote a book on the housing boom and bust. I think he's written like 40 books. I mean, the guy is a tank. I mean, he was writing, his last book was 2018. It came out when he was like 89 years old. To be that sharp at that age, I'm incredibly impressed by him, and I recommend all of his books, but for this case, Basic Economics, it is. All right, number 3, Free to Choose by Milton and Rose Friedman. I'm sure you've heard of Milton Friedman, the Nobel Prize, 1976, I think, winning economist. This one kind of gets more into not just economics, but economics as related to policy. That's why I really like it. It was one of my first books I read when I was getting into really understanding all this stuff. And it really paints a clear, real-world view of policies and the effects they have. So I think it's really good for someone who wants to understand the concepts and see how they relate to everyday worldview. And really the important concept, the important takeaway from this is that the freer the society, the more options you have, the more prosperous you'll be. Very important. And then there was a 1980 TV series as well with the same name. I think it's still on Amazon, so check out Amazon, binge watch that. I think it's like 10 episodes. It's awesome. Number 4, This is one that actually just came out last year. I finished it up a few months ago and thought it was super relevant to add on this list. It is The Case Against Socialism by Rand and Kelley Paul. Socialism is unfortunately rising in popularity, especially amongst young people. And you probably know how evil and horrible socialism is, but maybe you don't have all the exact arguments and how to put them eloquently. Well, this book takes all the case studies and just destroys that leftist logic, whether it's Venezuela or what they claim about the Scandinavian countries. This has the answers for you in today's society, and that's why I highly recommend it. Moving on to number 5, Meltdown by Dr. Thomas E. Woods. This one is about the recession of 07-08, the bubble that burst in the economy. And it says capitalism isn't the fault. A lot of people think that's what it is. But actually it's a lot of the policies that were put in place that kind of started with the 2001 dot-com bubble. Now, why this book is super relevant now is because we might be heading into another recession, and it's for a lot of the same reasons, the too big to fail mentality among them, and that's why I highly recommend the reading of Meltdown. So number 6, I hate to have it kind of sandwiched in there because it was probably the most influential book on this list to me and to my worldview, and it is The Law by Frederic Bastiat. In this book, he talks about natural law, legal plunder, among other things. It's really short, so I highly recommend if anyone wants kind of just a little bit into that worldview. This was written in 1850, I think it was. So a lot of the mindset of classical liberalism is kind of entailed in this really short book. It was written 2 months before his death, unfortunately, of tuberculosis. Like I said, in 1850. I think he was 49 at that point in time. It's too bad he didn't live longer because he already had some great contributions to society, such as the parable of the broken window. I'm not going to go into that because it would derail this video, but it's something you can look up real quick and you'll kind of go, aha, because it's another fallacy. People use the broken windows fallacy, so I highly recommend that, but definitely look into Bastiat and The Law. So now I'll segue into something I'm extremely passionate about and dedicated to preserving, the United States Constitution. And there's a very important distinction to be made between the Constitution and constitutional law. And in understanding this, you really have to go back to the founding principles of this country, and the founding era is something that I'm extremely interested in. It's probably my favorite thing to study or just talk about or read about or whatever. So these two books do a great job in discussing that. Number 7 is The Politically Incorrect Guide to the Constitution by Dr. Kevin Gutzman. And this one shows the little relationship between the Constitution as written and constitutional law today, and that's been imposed by judges using the Constitution as a blank check to put whatever they want into law. And then number 8 goes similarly along that vein, Lies the Government Told You by Judge Andrew J. Napolitano. I'm sure you're familiar with Judge Nap from Fox News. Now, I don't agree with him on everything, especially like the Trump impeachment stuff, but he's a very smart legal mind, and he knows a lot about the Constitution. In this book, it's really interesting, and if you get the audiobook, he narrates it, which I just find him an entertaining figure. But he talks about all of these big landmark cases and how judges have kind of went rogue, I guess you could say, with their interpretation of the Constitution, what's led to where we are today. And it's really unfortunate that pretty much since the ink was dry on the Constitution, there have been huge efforts to usurp its power. So number 9 is what I'm reading right now. It's Clarence Thomas's autobiography, My Grandfather's Son, by Clarence Thomas. It's his autobiography. I just thought I'd give something a little different in terms of putting kind of a story in here. I saw him speak at Hillsdale College commencement 2016. That was awesome. One of the coolest experiences of my life. I mean, the guy's had a really, really hard life growing up, and he's overcome some huge obstacles. So just on that alone, I have so much respect for the guy. And even furthermore, I really appreciate his commitment to originalism, an originalist understanding of the Constitution, and also natural law principles. He's definitely been my favorite Supreme Court justice in terms of his principle. He doesn't speak much. There's kind of a mystique surrounding him. He's a stoic. He doesn't talk much. But when he does, it's obviously really important. So I'm really thankful to his contributions on the Supreme Court. And that's why I put My Grandfather's Son at number 9. Number 10, this is going to be the one fiction book on here, although it's becoming less and less fiction, unfortunately. So you probably figured what it is by now. 1984, of course, by George Orwell. And I think in our PC culture, where so many things can't be spoken, you have thought crimes, you have a surveillance state, the book just couldn't be more relevant, and I recommend everyone read it because scary times we're headed if we don't learn from materials like this. You know what? We got time. Let's do one more. This is going to be the bonus book. This is a book given to me by a friend for my birthday a couple years ago. It is Reasons to Vote for Democrats. Ready for this one? I'll give you a little bit of a sneak peek. Now, there's a lot of Republicans this could be said for too, unfortunately. All right, well, thank you for watching. 10 plus a bonus books to read, recommended by yours truly during the lockdown or shutdown or whatever we're going to call it. And I hope these books really give you an insight into the principles of liberty, understanding the free market a little better, and making yourself someone that can become more of an advocate for a free society so that we're all better off. All right, take care, stay safe out there, and God bless.